Hello and welcome to Dialogue. China's President Xi Jinping has wrapped up a state visit to France, Serbia and Hungary. During his European tour, President Xi was given the red carpet treatment and a plethora of agreements have been inked. So what have been the highlights of President Xi's trip and how will the visits help deepen ties between China and the three nations? And where does China's relationship with Europe go from here? That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Wang Yiwei, Jean Monnet, Chair Professor of Renmin University of China, Maximilian Rech, Assistant Professor for International Relations at the SKEMA Business School, Levente Horváth, Director of Eurasia Center, former Consul General of Hungary in Shanghai, and Bart Horsten, China-EU Business Consulate. And also joining us shortly will be Jelena Grubor Stefanovic, Director of the Representative Office of the Serbian Chamber of Commerce and Industry in China. Welcome to Dialogue. Yiwei, I will start with you. President Xi has wrapped up the visits to the three nations, France, Serbia, and Hungary. So what are the highlights? What's your takeaway?
Two major impressions. So firstly, China and Europe partner is very crucial for political multipolar world and economic globalization. As long as China and Europe engage with the mutual beneficial cooperation, the so-called attempt to build the bloc confrontation cannot succeed. As long as China and Europe, upholds of the openness and win-win, and then so the deglobalization cannot be prevailed. So that's first. Secondly, upgrade of the relations. Like China and France, they even have the joint statement on AI. China now have the new quality development and high level of openness. And the European Union also seek the green and digital transformation. For China, Serbia, we are the ironclad partnership, but now upgrade to be community of the shared future partner. This is the first one. About China and the Hungarian cooperation, this is an all-weather strategic partnership. So actually upgrade all.
Yeah, this politically and also, of course, strategically very important against, let's say, people would call it deglobalization or retreat globalization or confrontation between different blocs there. Let's introduce Maximilian. So how do you see the visits here, I guess, both politically and also, relationship among big powers, China, European Union, and also European countries, economic sense too?
Good to be back with you, Xu Qinduo. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to welcome Xi Jinping after 5 years of no visits due to the difficult situation with regards to the COVID doldrums. So in that sense, it's good to have him back. I think it's a reciprocal welcome. President Macron has welcomed him in France, this time after having visited China last year. I think it is a good visit. I think overall, having visited France, also Serbia and Hungary, shows the importance of Europe. It was his first trip since 5 years. But President Macron has also shown, visionary leadership, welcoming the European Commission, welcoming the European Union in persona of Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, is important. It's an important signal. It shows that we are a unified continent that allows us to speak with one voice. And he has done that in 2019. He has done that again last year, welcoming Ursula von der Leyen with him in Beijing, welcomed by Xi Jinping, of course, and this year as well. Now, in terms of the absence of Olaf Scholz, that's of course a little bit of a pity. I myself am German, so it's a pity that he was not able to join in Paris. However, he had a visit to Lithuania, which was of course important as well.
Right, that's for national leaders, especially after the pandemic, it's important to have face-to-face discussion, exchange of ideas. And also, let me have Bart Horsten. Mr. Horsten, if you look at this, trade relationship, investment, trade, economic ties between China and the European nations, with Hungary, with France, of course, with the EU in general. How do you make of this trip?
Well, simply the fact that the president is visiting Europe, I think, is already a big step forward, because indeed person-to-person dialogue, building relationship, I think can only deepen the ties between the two blocs. Now, of course, it's not a coincidence that he's visiting France and Serbia and Hungary, because of course they have a really close relationship with China. And I think this could serve as a kind of a model for the cooperation also with other European countries. Of course, on one side, the problem is that there's a lot of bilateral agreements or bilateral trade, which of course is also in the interest of China. But I think from a European perspective, I think we need to work more on the unity of Europe, although as you know, Europe is a fragmented area of different countries, different cultures. So, and of course, every country will have its own interests. So I think it's an opportunity for the European Union to become more united. And I think indeed the fact that von der Leyen was there, and simply the fact that there is a dialogue, I think is already contributing to a deepening of the ties. Now, myself, mostly involved in business and trade between China and Europe. Of course, there is still a lot of negativity about China, but I do see that usually the negativity is often based on wrong assumptions. So I think that this visit may also help to create this better understanding, and from a business perspective allow European businesses and, well, at the same time hopefully also European governments to have a more open mind towards China and look at China as indeed in a positive way and not necessarily only in a negative way. But of course there are certain things which are not perfect both in China as well as in Europe, but I think we should focus on the positive points and look at ways of cooperation.
Well said. Of course, the last stop is Hungary. Let me introduce Mr. Levente Horváth here. You used to be, working in Shanghai, China, and it seems that Hungary, of course, the relationship between China and Hungary, this time around, all-weather strategic partnership. Obviously, Xi Jinping also called that's a model of bilateral relationship for China with the European nations. Tell us more in that respect.
Yes, sure, and thank you for the invitation. This all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership for the new era, this is the whole name of this partnership. Actually, in 2017, Hungary already had a comprehensive strategic partnership with China as the other EU members. But now we do have this all-weather, and for the new era, actually in this year, January, Uzbekistan, they already had the same cooperation or strategic partnership with China. But sure, as the Xi Jinping president also mentioned, this is a golden voyage for Hungary and China. And the Orbán Viktor, the prime minister of Hungary, he mentioned that this is the golden era for the Hungarian and Chinese relation. So it can be a high quality diplomatic relation, and as it was the 75th anniversary of the Hungarian and Chinese diplomatic relation, it was very nice to welcoming Xi Jinping president in Hungary. And I'm sure, as in the past 15 years, the Hungarian and Chinese trade and investment improved a lot. They are increasing very fast, and I'm sure in the next years it will be a really golden era for us in this strategic partnership.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Levente Horváth, tell us more about, you talked about, of course, if you look at the relationship between China and Hungary, a lot is really about economic interests, for Hungary, for China, investment and trade. Tell us more about that, for people who are not following the relationship closely. How important is it? I mean, how close is it?
Yes, indeed. In 2010, the Hungarian government announced the Open to the East policy, and then we participated in the One Belt, One Road. So we started a really strong cooperation. For example, in the trade, in the past 12 years, the Hungarian export has been doubled, and the Hungarian import from China has been tripled. So now the Hungarian-Chinese trade is 4% in the whole Hungarian trade. Also the investment. 14 years ago, China's FDI in Hungary, it was 1% in the total FDI of Hungary, but for now, it's already 9% of the total FDI. So you can see that there is a huge increasing, and also the Chinese investment, the Chinese government companies, they are giving more than 30,000 jobs for the Hungarian people. So we really welcome them. They are helping the GDP, and also with the help of the investments, Hungary already became the third biggest country in the battery market.
Yeah, third, biggest country in battery. That's, almost unimaginable, unbelievable for a country like Hungary. But, yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, Levente.
In the century, is the trend, the greenfield, the sustainability, and the electric cars, and this. So it is very important market, and we are the third.
Yeah, as far as I know, like CATL, the giant of battery, the battery giant from China, is investing like 7.3 billion euros in Hungary, and also BYD is establishing their first factory to producing EVs in European continent there. So it's a lot to develop, a lot to expect. And Bart, you earlier talked about this, misperception or misunderstanding about China. If you look at the example between China and Hungary, the Hungarian approach, let's say, is basically, they don't identify with the so-called overcapacity issue or de-risking policy. They don't, let's say, interfere with internal affairs. They don't have this like a heavy burden on their shoulder about ideological differences, different political systems. Is that what makes this, relationship so successful?
Yes, indeed. Of course, I think indeed, if you look at the Hungary-China case, of course, Hungary is still a small economy in the global, in the European Union, but I think indeed is a good example of how things can work, and indeed really as a win-win, because often from a European perspective, I'm here in Brussels in front of the European Commission building, and indeed we look at China still always with this obsession of overcapacity and China. I mean, nowadays you hear a lot of stories about espionage and a lot of other negative stories which really have a negative impact on the people's attitude or government's attitude, which is on one side understandable, but like I said before, it's often based on just misinformation or lack of information. And I think indeed the way Hungary is dealing with it, I think it could indeed help also European governments and countries and businesses to improve their relationship with China, and in the sense that not having like one party winning and the other losing. I think indeed it is offering a lot of synergies between the two blocks.
Right, that kind of zero-sum mentality or competition. Let me have Levente again. Levente, tell us, what makes Hungary in a kind of like a unique in terms of conducting relationship with China, as a member of the European Union. So what's how do you describe, how do you characterize the Hungarian approach toward China? Is Hungary afraid of the Chinese so-called, all those negative coverage in the media?
Yeah, sure. In the mainstream media, the EU is usually like criticizing China, but Hungary is the only one country in the EU who is not saying any bad about China, but we are seeking for a good and mutual respect and mutual benefits for this cooperation. And also I have to mention that Hungary has a stable economic and a stable politics environment. So in the past 14 years, we had Prime Minister Orbán on the government. So, and from the beginning, he was for China. So he was supporting China, and he didn't change his mind. And he is trying to reform the EU. But actually, I have to mention that, however, Hungary and China, we have a very strong economic cooperation. But if we see the EU members, however, they are criticizing China, but they have a bigger and stronger economic relationship with China, actually. And 1 month before, we have seen German Chancellor, he went to China and he was taking a 50-person delegation. In the delegation, there was the biggest German companies, presidents, and CEOs. And I'm sure they were going to China and they were not criticizing China, they were doing business there. So, and also Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, the prime minister of these countries, they went to China in the past few months, and Poland and Italy, the president and the prime minister, they are planning to go to China. So actually they all have this cooperation, and if we see the statistics, of course Hungary is a small country, but for us it's a huge effort and huge help from the Chinese companies. But the FDI and the trade is less lower than the France and China or Germany and China. Yeah.
But there's a successful case, obviously, a model of a handling relationship. Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Thank you, Levente. Thank you for joining us. Let me turn to Maximilian. Earlier you mentioned about this, vision of President Macron. Tell us more about that. He stressed very much, he repeated actually a couple of times at least about this strategic autonomy. Not long ago, he even talked about, Europe could, is not, his motto, Europe could die. Basically, he urges people in the European Union to be more aware of that, of more independence. So what does he mean by that?
Thank you, Tindor. If I can just reply back to Levente Horváth.
Go ahead.
I think it's important to understand the trade and investment relationship between China and the different European member states. I actually looked up the numbers. So according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, as a matter of fact, okay, of course, China is investing more in Serbia, is investing more in Hungary, is investing more in all European nations. But I looked at the comparison, and as a matter of fact, Germany is still the #1 trading partner of France, of Serbia, and of Hungary. As a matter of fact, all three nations, France, Serbia, and Hungary, have a negative trade balance with China. 20 million negative trade balance for France, for Hungary, it's 7 billion. For Serbia, it's 3 billion. So all three of them actually need more imports from China, right? So they basically need to export more to China, which is key for each of these states. So I think that is important. With regards to the trading partners, today, Hungary's #1 trading partner is Germany. China is not even in the top 3. For Serbia, it is equally not in the top 3. So indeed, we welcome trade and import and export of goods. That is one thing. But the thing is that there's so much more that could be done. So I would wish for each of those nations to also understand that sometimes trading partners such as Italy is more important than what China has to offer in terms of trade, in terms of import and export, and also in terms of investment, because even investment, there's a lot happening, but there could be so much more. So that on the story of the numbers, the actual facts on the ground, I think that is very important. You asked me about strategic autonomy.
Autonomy, yes.
I think strategic autonomy is key. Yes, I think that Macron is right to point it out. I think that it is important for Europe to be able to speak with one voice, speak in a unified fashion, but also speak independently. And so I think that Macron is right to point it out. But what I would love our Chinese audience to understand is that strategic autonomy, or having an independent European voice, does not necessarily mean that we disagree with our other partners, be that the G7, be that the other OECD nations. The thing here to understand is that we have interests, and those interests are oftentimes shared. So indeed, if you look at the trade balance, look at the investment, that is one thing. But if you look at Japan and Canada, I mean, they share the same concerns over a level playing field for our foreign companies when investing, when trading with China. If you look at France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, they are concerned about overcapacity. I mean, overcapacity was mentioned earlier on, right? So this is key. And also Germany, I mean, we are concerned about Made in China 2025, which is a program which is now coming to its end, but also with regards to the dual circulation, a buzzword that has been around in China for a long time. Or if we look at the new quality of productive forces, I mean, we are concerned, equally concerned about what exactly that means and how it will translate and be implemented in each of the provinces of China, and whether that allows our companies to continue doing business with China. That is, I think, key. I could talk on, but...
Right. Yiwei, I want to respond. Obviously, there's... I mean, China is a big country, not to mention, questions raised by Maximilian, even for Chinese living in this country, sometimes we don't understand, right? What's really going on. It's a huge nation, 1.4 billion people, of course, and also in terms of policy making, etc. Some of the questions probably is indeed, need the time, the care for the leaders to talk to each other, to have a better communication and find a solution. To concerns, Chinese side have their own concern about the European practice, the European side is the same. Go ahead.
Well, firstly, about the so-called trade imbalance deficit from China, the complaint. Second, about overcapacity and Chinese market access, whatever. There are three key areas we should focus. Firstly, the European Union now has so-called reciprocity with China, but not consistent. Sometimes say you should open as the European Union, which is advanced economy, most advanced in the world, right? China, we say we are a developing country, but not treat China as a developing country anymore, even not treat China as the market economy. So that reason overcapacity. Otherwise, it's not so neat. And secondly, if we want to solve this problem of the trade deficit from China, you need to make the CAI and the Comprehensive Investment Treaty finalized, not just finalized, but standard by the European Parliament. After the election, at least they come to force, and then we can have a more free flow of the goods, and then treat these issues.
Reportedly, there's much concession made by the Chinese side.
Of course, yeah. So the need
agreement,
but now European Union sometimes use the protectionism measures in the name of the tariff, in the digital or the green. Actually, it's not free market and as euro as before with China. Certainly, I think the most important is so-called the overcapacity is about the substitutes. Chinese comparative advantage in the e-vehicles is very comprehensive. Just one example, like the price of electricity. The China's price of electricity is just 1/3 of the France and 1/4 of Germany. And also logistics and strong government services. So not just blend with the producing itself. So European Union, you should enhance your comparative advantage. And cooperation with China, we can definitely towards that direction.
Is important too. Yeah, I agree. I think to make your products, service or more competitive. That's indeed important. Now let's have we have from Serbia. We have Jelena Grubor Stefanovic. Welcome to Dialogue. Tell us, now we have the two countries, China and Serbia, are embarking on a new path to build a community of shared future between the two countries. What does that mean to Serbia and to the two countries?
Thank you. So jointly chartering the shared future in the new era is indeed one of the key takeaways from the historic visit of President Xi to Serbia. As the highest possible form of cooperation between the two countries. First, I see it as an essentially as an upgrade of everything that the two countries have previously worked on, from the Belt and Road Initiative, the CEC China mechanism, the Asia Infrastructure and Investment Bank, and other major issues of mutual support, such as territorial integrity. In practice, I think it refers to the improvement in the spheres of economy, in the spheres of tourism, culture, and scientific and technical cooperation. As we have really seen this through the extended collaboration, through all the agreements that have been signed covering almost all areas. And at the forefront of this new path is a free trade between the two countries.
Yeah, free trade agreement. Earlier we talked about the trade deficit in terms of China need to and buy more, import more products from Serbia, from Hungary, from France, from Germany. I mean, here with the case of Serbia, like, people are looking forward to that. I think your president had made some promotion about your blueberries and other products to the China market, and certainly that would be welcome, from the Chinese side. So what are we looking forward to with the implementation of FTA in July, I believe?
Correct. So the free trade agreement is the most important agreement that Serbia has signed in the last couple of decades, and something that will create a new momentum for our economy in the future. I think it's an opportunity for all. Initially, at the start of the implementation of the agreement, I think China will have a more direct benefit due to the current structure of trade. But it's a two-way street, where on one hand it gives such an access to such a huge market as China to Serbian products and to products of all companies, foreign and domestic owned, with production capacities in Serbia. And also, in terms of import of raw materials and components from China for companies with production in Serbia. We signed some 28 agreements. Of those, 3 directly contribute to trade through providing additional access to China markets for Serbian agriculture, as you mentioned. We signed protocols for blueberries and prunes. And the other is in terms of opening and expanding new channels for trade through signing the Memorandum of Understanding for e-commerce cooperation between our trade ministries. I also think great significance from this visit is in terms of bringing additional focus to new areas that can also positively contribute to trade and economy, such as science and education. And I think it's great that Serbian scientists and students will visit and go to China. This means a lot in terms of our scientific development. So I think there's still room for collaboration, upgrading the infrastructure, but higher emphasis was put in all other areas, actually, of cooperation during this visit, such as green energy, AI, education, and tourism. We actually also signed and established an intergovernmental technology committee that would enable Serbia to get access to latest technologies in the use of AI. So, we can see that we're opening new prospects for cooperation with a focus on innovation dimension and making innovation and this cooperation kind of a new driver in growth of our relationship, which I'm really happy about. My office has actually been really doing a lot in terms of connecting our innovation ecosystem through the support of the CEC China mechanism and the city of Ningbo.
The city of Ningbo, a lot to expect, from the visit there. Bart, I want you to weigh in here. Obviously, to a certain extent, the visit is about this economic interest. That's win-win cooperation between China and the 3 nations there. And of course, China, as the China leader has said, they will increase the number of French students in China to 10,000, and also I think doubles or triples the number of young Europeans in China. I think it's a people-to-people exchange will increase understanding. So what's the way forward in terms of let's decrease misunderstanding or increase understanding so we can solve the problem, whatever problems between China and Europe, so we can focus on the issues, we can cooperate with each other in a win-win situation.
Yeah, Tindo, I mean,
well,
I could say something
simply,
on that if I may.
Sometimes things can...
Bart, please, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead. Oh, no, I was just wanting to add the visa-free policy, for example. I think it's a good example of how, although it may look like a rather irrelevant news, actually I have seen that thanks to this visa-free policy, there's already a lot of business people traveling to China, which maybe if it would not be the case, maybe they would not even apply for a visa for China. Now suddenly there's a visa-free policy. So I think already this, simply the fact that people have the chance to travel to China, to meet Chinese counterparts, I think already will contribute to the better understanding, and of course better understanding also gives improved trade relationships. Huh?
Yeah, easier and also more exchanges with each other. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thank you for being with us. See you next time.